What's up, guys? It's Graham here. So I'm finally going to be talking about one of the most requested topics that I've gotten here in the channel in the last month by a lot, and that would be my thoughts on Bitcoin. Alright, so first, Bitcoin. It made its first debut in 2009, and since then, it's slowly adopted a mainstream presence. As it gained popularity, it became the best performing asset of the last decade, rising 9 million %. The Bitcoin concept was anonymously created in the middle of the great financial crisis as a way to create a currency which was completely detached from mainstream banks and government. Bitcoins were mined using computers, solving complex algorithmic puzzles that progressively get harder and harder to solve over time. And the premise is that there will only be 21 million Bitcoins in existence, and that's it. As of now, about 18.5 million Bitcoins have been solved for and mined, leaving another 2.5 million Bitcoins out there ready to be taken. However, because the mining process gets harder and harder to solve over time, it's estimated that the final Bitcoin will not be mined until the year 2140. Although even though the price of Bitcoin has risen 9 million % over the last 10 years, it wasn't without its ups and downs. In fact, it's not uncommon for Bitcoin to rally up in price before crashing down 70 to 90% before again consolidating and running back up even higher. There's also been troubles of theft, fraud, price manipulation, scams, and government regulation which have put roadblock upon roadblock in front of Bitcoin. Yet here we are again close to another all-time high. So what happened? Well, lately the name of the game helping drive up the price and demand is mainstream adoption. Prior to this, demand was mostly between individuals who really believed in the concept, exchanged it as a currency, or believed in it long-term as an investment. But now that businesses have begun embracing Bitcoin as more than just a random store of value and instead an actual currency, prices have begun taking off. Recently, Goldman Sachs announced that they would be scrambling to catch up on Bitcoin by bridging the gap between financial markets and cryptocurrency. Their former hedge fund manager believed that the price of Bitcoin could surge to $1 million in 5 years, driven by a large wall of money. And the other big news, which really seemed to have pushed this off recently, is that 2 months ago, PayPal announced that their users would be able to buy and sell Bitcoin on their platform. They also say that their customers will be able to use cryptocurrencies to shop at the 26 million merchants on its network starting in early 2021. Now, because of that mainstream adoption, there's also been a big push to create a Bitcoin ETF for more passive investors. And American Express also invested in Falcon X cryptocurrency trading platform, further believing that cryptocurrency could be here to stay. But if you thought we were done, we're not done quite yet. The world's largest cryptocurrency exchange, Coinbase, is planning an IPO to become the first ever cryptocurrency exchange listed on Wall Street with an IPO price of between $30 and $60 billion. And to top it all off, as the final little cherry on top, the Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has been very open about her positive thoughts overall on Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. Now, even though she's openly said that she's not a fan and that it's a highly speculative asset, she's also been on record as saying that the Federal Reserve does not have the authority to regulate Bitcoin and that blockchain could have very significant implications for the payment system and conduct of business. And all in all, I have to agree, in the last few months there's been a big mainstream push towards Bitcoin that did not exist just a few years ago. Back then it was driven and manipulated by people who just saw it as a quick way to make money. But without actual utility and adoption, it subsequently crashed back down to the mid 3,000 range. Now, even though all of this is really good news for Bitcoin and it's easy to see why it's done so well recently, we need to talk about the bad, because I don't think it's just going to be smooth sailing from here on out. First is regulation. The Financial Crimes Enforcement Network just recently proposed a new regulation that would require people identify themselves and their personal information upon request when transferring more than $3,000. It would also require the exchange to report your information if you make more than $10,000 in transactions in a 24-hour period. Now, while that by itself might not seem like that big of a deal, the real implication is tying you as the owner to your own private wallet, where every transaction and Bitcoin you hold is recorded publicly in perpetuity. Now, of course, there are ways around it, but still, I don't think the government is going to let this one just go away without finding a way to track how much you get and spend. The second is the alleged price manipulation. Now, it was suggested that the meteoric rise of Bitcoin in 2017 was largely driven by coordinated price manipulation using the stablecoin Tether. Now, for those not aware, Tether is a cryptocurrency that's meant to mirror the US dollar, and they claim that they hold $1 US and or its equivalent for every one Tether in existence. So it's really no different than you giving them $1 US and them giving you back one Tether with that exact same face value. But the problem is there any actual proof that Tether is indeed backed by the US dollar? Third, we gotta talk about price volatility. It's no surprise Bitcoin can go down just as fast as it could go up. In the last few days alone, alone, it went from 28,000 to 34,000, then back to 28,000, then back to $31,000 within a few hours. Large sell orders can easily cause the entire market to drop 5 to 10% in a matter of minutes, and one big purchase could easily cause the entire market to skyrocket 5% instantaneously. And if we look back beyond just a few-day window, there's consistently been a major collapse every few years that wipes out the majority of its value. In 2011, it saw a 93% drop. 2012 saw a 56% drop. 2013 saw a 73% drop. 2015 saw an 85% drop. 2017 saw an 81% drop. But time after that, it's continually hit new all-time highs. So despite all of that, here's what you came for. Here are my honest thoughts about Bitcoin and whether or not I see this as a viable investment. For a lot of people, I think they feel safe holding their money in a currency that's completely detached from government, and I certainly get the appeal. People see Bitcoin as a hedge against a weakening currency, and when the US dollar drops, Bitcoin tends to go up. Bitcoin holds value because we give it value, much like the US dollar, which is not backed by anything other than the guarantee that it's legal tender, and that you could redeem a $100 bill for $100 worth of goods. However, the only difference is that the US dollar is backed by the US government, an income-producing nation, and the understanding that everyone, universally around the world, is going to accept this at face value for what it's worth. And that's not to say that this is good to hold on to, because even I'll tell you that this is going to be worth less over time. But certainly, this is not going to be dropping 90% in value in a year, it's not going to be going up 90% in value in a year, and overall it's going to remain fairly consistent. So for stability, we need a currency like this to make transactions. The issue I see with Bitcoin is that even though it's being adopted on a large scale, at the end of the day, what people really seem to care about is not so much the technology or the decentralized network or its use as a currency, but instead how much money they could make from this in the future if it continues to go up in price. Now, of course, I realize you could say that about any investment, but this worries me because traditional investments usually provide a tangible product or service that serves as the foundation of their value through revenue and profit. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point Bitcoin is recognized as a digital gold or store of value. But in order to be used as an actual currency, we can't be having these crazy price fluctuations hour by hour. Perhaps one day Bitcoin could be a global reserve currency capable of transferring trillions of dollars around the world in a matter of minutes. But as of right now, we still have a long way to go. We also risk government stepping in and trying to regulate it, or more likely, they create their own USD cryptocurrency to try to replace it. I'm a firm believer that money like this is eventually going to be a thing in the past, and that in 20 years from now, everything we do will be traced and digital.